For your small assignment this week, you're going to create a scene that looks like this, where you have an object animated in the scene and the camera animated to follow it along. So if I click in here and hit play, you can see how this looks. You see the camera object looking at it. If I click here as I'm playing, you can see what's actually being seen. I have this narrow little view, which technically counts as what the camera really would render. And then I have this animation where it looks at it as it flies around it. So let's go over how to make this. I'm going to go to File, New Scene. And I'm going to make myself just some ground to base things on. I'm going to go ahead and add a new material to that. Something simple like my checker floor. Hit 6. There's my checker floor. And then I'm going to add something which is animated. Let's make just a sphere. And I'm going to animate you over the course of, let's just say 60 frames. Something simple. Animate you from there to there. Let's make the ball distinctively colored. Another blend. Let's go with blue. Alright, so I've got a blue ball moving over this sea. Wonderful. Now I've got my awesome animation set up. I want to film it. So we're going to create some cameras here. If I go to rendering, and I click on this symbol right here for the camera, there's my camera. Remember, this is elaborately made to look like an actual camera, an old-fashioned one. It's not actually a physical object in the scene. It can intersect with objects, you won't see it in rendering. It's just a symbol to say where your camera angle is. And because I've got this camera in my scene, if I go to the top of my viewport, go to Panels, Perspective, I've got two things. Persp is the normal thing, this camera that I use by default in our scene, and now I've got Camera 1, which I can see what it's seeing right here, and move it around just like a regular camera. Now, if you want to change what you've done with the camera by moving it in this scene, in this view, I can hit Alt-Z. Instead of Control-Z, it's Alt-Z. Alt-Z undoes camera moves. Control-Z undoes things you do out here. So if I take this and move it with these controls instead, Control-Z will undo whatever I've done by grabbing it. If I move my camera around, Alt-Z undoes camera moves. So let's talk about camera types for a second. If I go to the top right here, the first thing it says, camera attributes controls. Camera, camera and aim, camera, aim, and up. And you'll see these little orbs connected to the camera appearing. I'm going to ignore camera, aim, and up here. We've already looked at camera. Let's look at camera and aim, because this one's important. What you've got here is now, instead of just a camera, I've got a camera group with the actual camera and camera 1 aim, these two objects. And I can grab them both. They're independent of each other. And see what happens if I grab the aim and stick it somewhere, the camera follows suit. And no matter where this camera goes now, it'll always be looking at this point. This could be useful for a couple of effects. So briefly, let's lay this out so we can see it better. I'm going to go to Panels, Layouts, 2 panels side by side. So now I have 2 camera views. Persp, and it's set it to side view, X right here. I can change this again. My orthographic views are my front, side, and top, the way we normally have here. Or I could go to Perspective, Camera 1. So now I've got the scene, and now I've got my camera over there, which I can manipulate. You can see it changing in real time. Let's hit 6 here so I can actually see my textures. Remember, when you hit 5 and 6, it's dependent on where you're clicking. So if I hit 4 in here, it's all wireframe. Over here, shaded, textured, whatever you like. Also, don't mind that this line sometimes breaks from the camera aim. It's a little buggy. But I could, for example, just place this right inside that orb, and now my camera is looking directly at the orb. In a second, with the animation, you'll see it leave. Remember, you have to click inside a camera to see the animation on the timeline. But we'll fix that. So, got my camera aim over here. I want to do a couple more things in here. This view, it changes depending on how big this window is. So this right here is not necessarily what's going to be rendered. Let's go ahead and activate a film gate, because by default, if we remember our render settings, you do have a resolution of your camera. Right now it's HD 540, 960 by 540. So it should be a little wider than it is tall. This right here, I could pretend this is the exact one. I don't know if this is accurate though. So let's make sure that we know exactly what this is really going to film, what's actually going to show up in the rendering, by going to View, and if we go to Camera Settings, we've got Film Gate, Resolution Gate. I'm going to go with Resolution Gate. This will show me what's actually being filmed inside this box. This is what's actually being filmed. If I make this narrow enough, though, this is not going to fit. So let's also insist that it always show me what's going to be filmed. Camera Settings. After I activate my Resolution Gate, I can go down to Fill, Horizontal, Vertical, or Overscan. Overscan will change a bit what's actually being viewed. If I just hit horizontal, it's going to say, always fit this thing horizontally. So now, as I squeeze it, you'll see this gets tinier. I can actually see what's being filmed, the borders of this, accurately, no matter what I do with this view. And sometimes it's good to make it small. All you need to do is see a preview here and work with this space out here. If I take my camera aim and move it over here, you can see halfway cutting through my little ball over there. If I go to my render view and hit render, now I've got this camera out here. I can click in here, hit render again. Oops, let's start over. I click in here, then I hit render. How about that? Okay. So, halfway across the ball, there it is, the edge of my frame, it's halfway across the ball. So this is accurate per the camera. This will actually show me what's going to render in the end. Good general tip. Make sure your camera shows exactly what's going to end up in the final render. And we can do all sorts of complicated stuff with elaborate camera motions like this. I've got my old action scene from before. Let's open up my battle animation scene. Sorry, thank you. This view right here, if I go to my camera view, had this elaborate action scene where the plane flies over, shoots at the weird tower thing, and then gets lasered down. This camera is all over the place. If I come back to the main perspective, you can see not a lot of stuff is showing up in the scene. That's because I've gone to show and I turned off a whole lot of things. If I go to all, there's every single thing in the scene I'm looking at. There's the path the plane is on. There's my camera. I could just say none, except I do want to look at polygons because that's what makes up the scene, and I also want to see my cameras. So there's my camera, and you can't see the camera aim. I believe the camera aim is a locator. I'm always forgetting, amongst other things, where locators are on this menu. Locator, 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 locator. Not sure where it is. Let's just do all for a second. There you are. I forget what the camera aim is. I'm sorry. I'll do that later. Anyway, you can see my camera and my aim moving around my scene, following my plane. Not quite accurately. You see, I'm moving the aim around a bit. It's a little above the plane. It's a little behind the plane. Depending on what kind of view I want, I move it around to get the effect I'm looking for. So, what you're going to do is you're going to animate something very, very simple. You're going to animate this moving from one side to the other, and then you're going to animate both the camera and your camera aim so that you get a view like this. It's not perfectly following the box. I could mess with this a bit. I could come over here to my camera group and say, camera aim beforehand, I want you to be a bit behind the box. Camera's going to start not quite getting it. It's going to catch up eventually. Oops. Let's see here. Camera aim. Where'd you end up? By the end of this, I want you to... Oh, this version isn't animated. My bad. Alright, so start over there. Set a keyframe. Come over here. Set another keyframe. Alright. Now my camera and my camera aim are moving. So starts up behind, catches up with the box, and then stays with it until the end. All you gotta do is animate 60 frames of a camera and camera aim following a box moving. And because this doesn't require any files, textures, or anything like that, you can just hand in a .mb for this. And that's the small assignment.